It was the last day of 8th grade, a day filled with excitement and bittersweet farewells. My middle school was massive, with over 1,000 students buzzing around, scribbling signatures and silly messages in each other's yearbooks. To keep things organized, teachers collected our yearbooks and passed them around different classrooms, ensuring everyone got a chance to sign. But this system had flaws. Anyone could write anything, and some kids used it to leave cruel notes for people they didn't like. Teachers did their best to keep things under control, but with so many students, it was impossible to catch everything. While I got my yearbook back at the end of the day, I flipped through it, smiling at the goofy messages from my friends. Then, something strange caught my eye. There, below the photo of a boy I'd never seen before, was a signature. His name was Samuel Robinson III, a name I'll never forget. His message was short and unsettling. It read, "Have a great summer. I'll see you again." I stared at it, confused. I'd never met this kid, never even spoken to him. But the school year was over, so there was nothing I could do. I brushed it off as a weird mistake and tried not to think about it. That night, I hosted a sleepover in my basement with my best friends, Kevin, David, and Kieran. We stuffed our faces with Doritos and played video games until the early hours. My parents' bedroom was 3 floors above, so we didn't worry about keeping quiet. Around 2 in the morning, we were messing around on my dad's rowing machine when a sharp knock echoed from the storm door. We froze. Who would knock on the basement door at this hour? The knocks continued, steady and rhythmic, like someone was trying to get our attention without waking the house. Before I could stop him, Kieran shouted, "Who's there?" I cringed. He'd just announced we were down here. After a long pause, a muffled voice answered, cheerful and high-pitched, like a teenager trying to sound friendly. "Come to the back door," he said. It didn't make sense. Why was a kid outside my house in the middle of the night? My friends thought it was thrilling, like some kind of adventure, and they pressured me to check it out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We crept upstairs, careful not to make noise. Through the glass pane by the back door, I saw a shadowy figure under the dim porch light. As I got closer, his face came into view, and my stomach dropped. It was him, Samuel Robinson III, the kid who'd signed my yearbook. My friends moved to open the door, but I stopped them, whispering that I knew who he was. I told them about the yearbook message, and their excitement faded. Samuel was still outside, watching us. He must have seen my panic because he started motioning toward the side of the house, like he wanted me to open a window. I didn't want to engage, but my friends insisted we at least talk to him. So, I cracked open the kitchen window, just enough to hear him. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice shaky. He smiled. "Oh, you got my message." He introduced himself as Sam and said he'd always watched me from afar, that we could have been friends. I nodded, trying to stay calm, but inside, I was freaking out. There was no way I'd ever be friends with this kid. I had to know, so I asked, "How do you know where I live?" He didn't answer. The silence was heavy. Before I could say anything else, David snapped, calling him a creepy stalker and telling him to leave. Sam's smile vanished. His head tilted, like he was confused. Then his face twisted into something dark, almost hateful. He started screaming, saying he hated my friends, that we should all die, and spitting out personal details he shouldn't have known. He lunged at the window, trying to force it open. I slammed it shut and locked it. He banged on the glass, snarling like a wild animal, inches from breaking it. The noise must have woken my parents because they came rushing downstairs, demanding to know what was happening. Sam bolted. I explained everything as fast as I could, and my dad ran outside in his pajamas, but Sam was gone. My parents didn't call the police, thinking it was just a kid being weird. They told us to go back to sleep and said they'd handle it with the school in the morning. I barely slept, my mind racing. The next day, my parents contacted the school, and we learned something chilling. Samuel Robinson III had been expelled weeks before the school year ended. He shouldn't have been there on the last day. His photo was in the yearbook because it was printed before his expulsion, but that meant he'd snuck into the school just to sign mine. No one could find him or his family. It was like they'd vanished. The school tried to keep it quiet, but I was terrified. How did he know where I lived? Why me? The theory was that Sam was a troubled kid who'd fixated on me for some unknown reason, maybe even stalked me for weeks. My parents were on edge for months, but we never talked about it again. It was too unsettling. Living in that house never felt the same after that night. Years later, On the last day of my senior year in high school, another strange incident shook me. It was May 2019, and the graduation ceremony was still a few days away. As tradition, the seniors gathered at the clock tower on campus to celebrate, and by 10 at night, over 1,000 of us were packed into the courtyard, drinking and reminiscing. It was bittersweet, but the relief of finishing finals was palpable. I was with 5 friends, including Garrett, a guy known for his wild behavior. He bragged about his fights, spent hours in the gym, and never backed down from challenge. That night, as we walked home through the city, Garrett's recklessness got us into trouble. We lived off campus, and the streets weren't always safe, especially late at night. Homeless people were common, but they usually kept to themselves. As we crossed the street, a man ran up to us, yelling incoherently. He stood in the crosswalk, blocking our path, acting erratic. We laughed nervously and walked around him, trying to avoid trouble. Everyone except Garrett. He shouted back, telling the man to get out of the street and stop bothering people. The man lunged toward Garrett, and we jumped in to pull him back. The man backed off, still yelling, and we thought it was over. But Garrett wasn't done. He charged at the man, screaming, and the guy ran away. We laughed, thinking it was funny, like scaring off a flock of birds. But as we continued walking, we noticed the man following us, shouting threats about how we'd made a mistake. We heckled him back, hoping he'd leave, but that only made him angrier. We were drunk, celebrating, and not thinking clearly. A block from our house, he was still trailing us, and I didn't want him knowing where we lived. Garrett took off again, sprinting toward the man, who fled. We jogged the rest of the way home, thinking we'd lost him. Hours later, after more partying, I stumbled outside to grab a food delivery and noticed something odd. The side gate to our backyard was open. We always tied it shut with twine, so someone had undone it deliberately. My gut told me it was the man from earlier. Instead of getting my friends, I decided to check it out myself. I walked around the house, trying to stay steady. As I turned the corner into the backyard, a rope tightened around my throat. I flailed, but someone was strangling me from behind. I thought I was going to die. With all my strength, I kicked backward, knocking him off balance. We hit the ground, and I gasped for air. He clawed at my face, drawing blood, before I threw him off. He scrambled to his feet and ran into the darkness. I staggered back to the house, blood streaming down my face. My friends called an ambulance, and I ended up in the hospital. The cuts weren't deep, but I needed shots to protect against infections. The police weren't much help, and since I was moving out soon, there wasn't much I could do. The worst part was the scars on my face, visible in all my graduation photos. Garrett felt terrible and tried to make it up to me, but I didn't blame him. I just hoped he'd learned not to provoke people who had nothing to lose. Back in 7th grade, another eerie memory stuck with me. There was a kid in my homeroom named Sven who was, to put it mildly, unusual. He didn't talk much, always wore the same cargo shorts and oversized burgundy hoodie, and sat in the same back corner of every classroom. His deep voice made him a target for bullies, and he had no friends. During recess, he'd stand alone by the fence near the woods, never playing or interacting. Some kid said he talked to someone on the other side, but I never saw it myself. On the last day of school, our middle school had a tradition where students swapped classrooms to mess with teachers. My friends left to join the fun, but I stayed behind, not wanting to break rules. Sven was in the class, acting stranger than usual, tapping his foot and glancing around like he was watching someone. The room was full of unfamiliar kids, more than I'd expected, given the tradition. Our teacher, Miss Bell, stepped out to whisper with another teacher, looking uneasy. They pulled a few kids into the hallway, saying nothing to the rest of us. Minutes later, the fire alarm blared. Miss Bell calmly led us outside to the field, where we grouped by homeroom. As we waited, I glanced back at the school and saw something move in a second-story window. It was quick, maybe a shadow, but it felt wrong. The school was supposed to be empty. Police cars soon arrived, officers rushing inside. We were sent home early, with no explanation. Later, my parents told me what the school had shared. Some kids who didn't attend our school had gotten inside, possibly planning to start a fire. Miss Bell had found suspicious items in a backpack, and the fire drill was used to flush everyone out. The most unsettling part, Sven had led those kids into the school through the side fence during recess. I never saw him again, and the whole thing left me shaken. These moments, from Sam's chilling message to Garrett's reckless night and Sven's strange behavior, have stayed with me. They're reminders of how quickly things can turn, how the people around us can hide secrets, and how the places we know best can feel forever changed.